Hello everyone, it's Oliver Harper here, and I'm joined again with my good friend Tim Partridge.
Hi.
Some of my more avid listeners may remember Tim from the Ninja Turtles and Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2 commentaries, and today he's joining me for a chat on Darkman, the Sam Raimi classic from 1990. Now remember, it's an audio commentary, not a video, but you can sync up the commentary with your own copy of the film by putting the timestamp to 0 and pressing play now. Starting with the classic Universal logo and going through all the renditions they've done over the years. I think they introduced this on the Back to the Future Part 3, possibly.
Possibly.
Yeah. So Tim,
I'm just going to say I love James Horner's music for this,
yeah,
and
definitely.
I love that intro logo. I love it. I think it's fantastic.
I love all the stars and stuff in the
I
background.
hope they could bring it back. It's beautiful.
So Tim, would you put Darkman in your top 10 films?
Top 10.
Or would you say top 20?
It's always difficult to do a top 10,
It is.
but it's certainly one of my favourite films.
What was your kind of initial first experience with Darkman? Was it on videotape?
No, I actually saw it on... there was a show that Alex Cox did in the early 90s, 1993. I didn't actually see the intro of it, but Alex Cox would do this show. I can't remember what it's called. Movie something.
Movie Drone, wasn't it?
I can't remember. I should know. I watched so many of them. Anyway, I caught it halfway through. Probably the elephant sequence,
Oh, right, yeah.
and I was hooked, blown away. And it was very late at night as well that it was on.
Oh, yeah.
I just want to say I love the intro here. We're beginning. You know, most of these kind of superhero films tended to be set like Batman, you know, in a fantasy world, and this seemed very gritty and real, and there seemed to be a lot of character in all of the villains. You didn't kind of have somebody in a jumpsuit or somebody dressed like Tracy Walter is as the in Batman, where he's dressed as Bob the Goon.
Sure.
Here everyone kind of looked like real people that you'd see on the street, and it made it especially unnerving if you were younger watching it. I was going to mention as well too, I always thought it's quite interesting that it's set in a more kind of real world. And even though the film came out in 1990, it basically is an 80s film.
Yeah.
It was shot during 1989. And I think there are parallels with this and RoboCop, actually. Specifically, I mean, this opening sequence, which I think is wonderful. It's got so much energy to it. Energy throughout the film. It's such an amazing film. And
You can see the snippets of comedy already thrown in.
yeah, but it all just seems slightly unnerving, like RoboCop, actually.
Yes.
But here, you know, you've got a Docklands area which is going to get wiped out, so a big steel and steel, concrete and glass structure can be built on it, a huge city. And that's not unlike Delta City in RoboCop, but I wonder, in terms of that idea of the 80s inverted commas urban underclass commentary that something like RoboCop has, I'd argue perhaps this film is doing that too. And I go one further and say, the first person we're introduced to who gets wiped out before the opening credits is a character with the surname Black, Eddie Black.
Yeah.
And you never see another black character throughout the rest of the
don't.
film. And I wonder if that's a subtle bit of period political commentary about the direction that the country was going.
Because with Sam Raimi films, when I watch them, I don't pick out bits that would be kind of political social commentary. But as you kind of mentioned,
Well,
it does have underlining themes.
I'm speculating. I've watched this film hundreds of times, and that's with knowing somewhat of the context of the time. I mean, it could be entirely coincidental. I don't think so, though. I kind of think.
This film went through so many drafts, though. I mean, the Coen brothers doing uncredited stuff, so they could have influenced these kind of themes.
Who knows? I mean, this is all complete speculation, but I like to think that films are a reflection of a time.
Yeah.
And these are intelligent artists making these things too, and sometimes as well things just come out of coincidence, just out of being made at that time. Things happen given the context. And anyway, here we're into this. We were just almost finished it now. This is this amazing, energetic action sequence with Larry Drake, who we need to really introduce as well, who's kind of the heart of this. He looks like like a school teacher, a creepy school teacher, but
he's got that kind of classic film noir sort of gangster.
Well, Sam Raimi described it as a modern Edward Robinson, and
on the left there we've got is it Skippy, isn't it? With the hops on his leg from Evil Dead 2. He's the redneck style character.
Yeah, and Larry Drake's performance is just completely menacing. I mean, here it's so intimidating with the that signature cigar chomper that he has.
Yeah.
I always actually found, because again, when I first saw this, probably the second time I saw this, which was on television, it had been edited. So this whole sequence here with the fingers getting ripped off, it cut just after the first one. I actually think that's kind of a lot more threatening than actually showing three of them, especially as they can't actually show blood.
Yeah, they don't actually show any blood.
Yeah. But it's still a masterful opening.
The sound effect works so well. And you're not actually seeing it.
And you dispose of that character again, it's gone. And and you start off in that grimy warehouse, and it seems kind of seedy, and you've got all these gangsters. But then it ends up going to a much more middle class setting afterwards. When you go to meet Peyton and Julie, and they're living above a kind of pre-millennial coffee shop, and everything's bright and white, and then Julie's a lawyer, and she goes to see Strack, who of course is doing very well, and they like Delta City, they're building these high rises.
What he's going to build, it's like the setting the seeds of what's going to become.
But there was something in the air around that time about, as I say, kind of 80s urban, as I say, inverted commas, urban underclass, and I think it just feeds in as things do of the time. Although those are also always kind of classic ideas of bad guys trying to cleanse landscapes and stuff. I mean, you've got it in films like, to some degree, it's in things like Mad Max.
Well, it's like you're looking at the villains are the people that are in control of land.
Yeah.
Redevelopment. That was people everyone's kind of scared of.
Yeah, and this is a brilliant title sequence, by the way, by Pablo Ferro, credited to, who's a famous title designer. It's really sketchy. Did he do
Evil Dead 2 as well?
I'm not sure. I don't think so.
Okay.
And this is great. This amazing score by Danny Elfman, which here at this point it almost sounds like a western. It's got so much energy to it. It's absolutely fantastic, and not at all like Batman or kind of the other gothic-y stuff. This kind of makes me think.
This
more.
Actually is radically different in many areas to his work on Batman and Dick Tracy. With Dick Tracy and Batman, there's a lot of similarity to these the cues, but this one.
Well, they're all connected with that kind of slightly gothic, kind of Bernard Herrmann throwback kind of, but in a brilliant way, by the way. An affectionate, I say throwback, affectionate. I presume it's Shirley Walker still doing the arrangements. I presume. Or conducting, as it were. Yeah. And again, here, as I said, we're in this big, shiny, nice utopian place with all these flashy new computers that, when I watched this all the way through the 90s, I thought the technology seemed to be future-proofed. Yeah. Much like Gremlins 2. If you watch that, it seemed to be made.
What you mean in the control room bit, seeing
the whole clamp tower and and all the technology that you see that's made for the movie, it all kind of reflects the time. And but
it also reminds me a little bit of The Flash. When they're sort of, in the laboratory sort of sequence.
There was something in the air. Things feed off. People are inspired, I guess, by...
What do you think of Liam Neeson in the role? Do you think he kind of nails the performance? And could you picture anyone else? Because at the time, I think they had considered Bruce Campbell, then there's Bill Paxton, and then Gary Oldman had also kind of the rumblings of these kind of people trying to be attached.
Yeah, I mean, I can see Bruce Campbell doing it. I think Liam Neeson conveys a heck of a lot of emotion.
He does.
He also has to be quite heightened at times.
He's very working sort of comical,
but he's working behind that makeup so much, and he has to make it nuanced. You have to make it relatable. He has to have an intimate relationship with Frances McDormand as well, and I think he the way he paces each scene is completely different depending
Sure.
on where the character is, and he's having this breakdown, and also he's having this kind of neurological meltdown as well too.
Yeah.
And I like the way they kind of establish a sidekick for him here. And there's one of the, I believe that this is a miniature.
It's a foreground miniature, isn't it?
I believe that the actual building is a miniature by the Skotak brothers of the outside of Peyton and Julie's place, or Peyton's place, sorry.
Yeah.
And here's Frances McDormand. I think she's absolutely amazing. What I really like about this film, which is kind of contrary to the genre, I think, is this isn't. Usually, you have two people who meet and they're still very much in the honeymoon phase, and they leave at the honeymoon phase and they live happily ever after. And I like the fact that these are two comfortable 30-somethings who are well past the honeymoon stage.
Yeah.
They clearly love each other, but they completely take their middle class life for granted. Again, a great contrast to the rest, to the opening and everything that Peyton loses as well. It's all taken for granted here. Oh, should we get married? Oh, maybe in another whenever, well, maybe in a we'll think about it. Oh, it's not
There seems to
something.
be no rush for them.
Yeah, well, she's a working professional. He's a working professional. They both have their independence. They love it. Everything's wonderful. They live above this wonderful. They literally live above a coffee shop. Everything's just so great, and it's blue skies, and it's in stark contrast to the world around them that Strack is wanting to redevelop, and I think there's a theme throughout the film that you can't really disguise ugliness. I think there's something around that, because then you look, as I say, you've got the docks that are getting turned into, they're getting flattened and turned into this kind of new structural built city of glass and steel, but underneath it, it's been made in a very corrupt fashion with mobsters, and rich people paying mobsters to go and cleanse an area to get rid of everybody out there, and also too, the main character, Darkman, he's putting rubber masks on to disguise who he is, and underneath he's this thing that's festering, rotting away. Louis Strack is he's got this high rise, he's got everything around him, all this material stuff, but he's
being very, very superficial.
Yeah, there's an element of that, a huge element of that, I think. But I do think there is this subtext of urban development and ideas of the underclass. I think
it's a satire on what was going on at the time in government as well. With the Reagan era.
Yeah, I mean, as I say, I just think these things feed in. I mean, this is purely my way of looking at it. I could be completely. The filmmakers might be listening and going, "What the heck is he talking about? That's nonsense." Who knows? But that's just that's what I've cut. That's the richness that I think's there, and they could have set this in Gotham City. I mean, this is a kind of anywhere city.
Wasn't it? It all kind of stemmed from that Sam Raimi wanted to do a Batman, or say the Shadow movie. He couldn't obtain the rights, and this film kind of feels more like the Shadow to a certain degree, how he looks.
Yeah.
And it's got the film noir elements, and the kind of production design kind of borrows that sort of 30s aesthetic.
Well, speaking of which, we're now in the office of Louis Strack. This is one of my favourite sets ever, because it looks. Again, we're talking about future proofing. If you look at Daniel Clamp's building in Gremlins 2, it feels of that world, and I think we've had a conversation before about how there seemed to be something there at the time with these comic book films, like, well, there's Dick Tracy, there's the Flash as well. I'd even argue and say Lois and Clark had it with the Daily Planet, but there was this sort of throwback, this affection in the late 80s, early 90s for the 40s, and I'm thinking things like The Fountainhead, the Gary Cooper film. I think I can see The Fountainhead in here, which is a film about architecture. And now we're introduced to Strack City, which again is very similar to Delta City with the setup. And I think Strack is fantastic because he's so charismatic, and everything he talks is like a sales pitch, and it's so manipulative.
He is, yeah.
And he's also I wonder if there's a slight dig at nepotism too, in that I think he's credited as Louis Strack III or Louis Strack Jr. And his father had kind of set up the family business, and he'd kind of taking it through, and he's very confident, and you never see anyone personal kind of around him. And I love this scene, is so great because it sets up this tone of everything's great, everything's fine. We've seen all that awful kind of dust and you know and the killing and the all the kind of sleaze at the beginning of the film, and now we're in this really comfy, cozy office with you know, luxurious leather sofas and nice suits and people having gentle talk, all very professional, and everyone's sat and people are sat down, but there's not a lot of movement, and it all feels very calm and intimate, and it's tricking you, the audience, to think, even though you know he's the bad guy, you want
him to think, oh, he may be doing something really good.
He's clean. He's away from all the dirty underclass. You know, he's in his high tower. She's protected.
It was like OCP, there. And he's got the Clarence Bodiger character.
Absolutely.
To sort everything out.
Yeah, and this is, we're back in the lab now, and I love how Sam Raimi. You know, he manages to portray. He's got this idea of this skin cells, and they're breaking down after an hour or whatever it is. You know, in 90 minutes.
Yeah, that's right.
But he manages to show it visually in a very quick amount of time, with sort of minimal amount of shots and stuff as well. And you get quite a complicated, not really visual idea. Is communicated so well.
Yeah.
So quickly.
You think you'd read it on the script and think this would be difficult to shoot.
Yeah.
And he's visualised it very easily, like a comic book panel, you know. Oh, he's got the William Shatner lightning there.
Yeah, well, this is the hints of the kind of expressionistic filmmaking that goes on.
Because he's going to show that's his kind of mask, you know.
Because the film is very much, it's either against blue skies in the real world. It's the real sort of acid blue skies of LA.
Yeah. Or
it's this kind of expressionistic sort of very stylized graphic novel, Phantom of the Opera kind of big, The Shadow.
Yeah.
You mentioned before. These are great, aren't they? These camera tricks with Raimi pulls off. It's like a roller coaster, isn't it?
It is.
You know what else I really love about this film? It's so tight.
It's
just like, and if you think about it too, there's hardly any characters in it, really.
Yeah, he focuses on 4 characters really.
Well, you've got
Durant, you know, in Neeson, you got Julie, and you got what's his name? The bloke at the head of the corporation. Strack, yeah, that's 4 really.
Yeah, and then you've got
these sidekicks
and these kind of minions that just get knocked off, who are kind of deliberately two-dimensional. And
but this scene coming up when he sees his lab partner get killed is the kind of first kind of crazy kind of anger he can display. Liam Neeson does. He goes, you know, because he sees him also get shot in the head. But you can see you never expect him beforehand to kind of display these kind of eccentric personality. But
even then, it's kind of underplayed. It reminds me of something like Timothy Dalton in the Bond films when he sees a colleague dead, and there's a lot of internal stuff going on.
It's also kind of a little bit comical the way he kind of delivers it. No, because it's all that sort of Sam Raimi style.
Yeah.
He can balance that of being kind of really graphic but funny at the same time.
But I think by having those 4 key characters as well, it just means everything is just so airtight. You can just get on with the story, and you bam, 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 bam. And it's an internal story as well of Peyton Westlake. But it doesn't. There's nothing that really. There's no real indulgent moment. Yeah, there's the scenes where he's being sort of reflective. You know, the bit where he sees the cat and he thinks it says I'm a funny freak show, you know, clown or whatever. But zip, 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 zip. It's just tight.
Well, there was a lot cut out though. You know, because Sam Raimi had shot a lot of footage. There's also a lot more scenes of him losing his temper. Like visually, you see, you know, his head crack. You know
Here's the Belisarius Memorandum. It's one of my favourite MacGuffins in a film. Bit of trivia: the burning hands here.
That's stop motion, isn't it?
Yeah, and they're done by the Chiodo brothers, who did Critters. I think I've completely mispronounced their names. Apologies, guys. They're very, very famous creature guys. They did Team America. They did the puppets as well.
Oh, did they? That's fantastic.
But all this stuff is all it's like a roller coaster. Every shot, you know, everything's kind of it's really been taken advantage of.
Energy to every shot.
Yeah. But it's showing horror too, and it's doing comedy. Do you know, that's the other thing. It does drama, it does comedy, it does action, it does humour, and it ranging from slapstick all the way to gore and blood and all kinds of stuff.
Do you think that sort of wide kind of content would, would kind of like make studios a little bit worried. Sort of think, oh, is this going in the wrong direction?
It must have. I mean, because it's much darker than Batman.
It is.
But then I guess maybe Batman had opened it up a bit more. Maybe then people thought, oh, maybe we could top it a bit. Who knows? I don't know.
Yeah. Because Batman was a 15, when it came out. So it could get away with certain things. And Batman was a 15 on video, but a 12, I think, in cinemas.
This is great when Julie comes out and she just notes the people driving away. But she's still focused on herself very much. The other great thing I like about her so much as well is she's not portrayed as a sexual object. She's not. You don't see her in skimpy outfits.
Well, she didn't want to be the damsel in distress, but inevitably that does happen at the end.
Well,
but she also felt she was miscast, though.
I think that's nonsense, personally.
And maybe she was thought maybe they should have gone for a more kind of blonde bimbo type of girl. I don't know.
I think it's just
but
great.
I think it's great to have a strong female character
who's in her 30s and is comfortable and they're past the honeymoon period and they're three-dimensional. You never see her sort of in fetishized clothing and this is,
I do love that shot when he flies out the house.
There's great pyrotechnic, by the way, of the building exploding when just then as well, which I think is the Skotax as well. I think Joseph Viscosal, who did the explosions in Star Wars and stuff, he was the pyrotechnician on a lot of this stuff in this.
What he did on A New Hope.
Oh, really? And this is a great transition shot to the funeral. Where
it's a great idea, but kind of if
it was 5 years too early.
If it was 93, that would have worked.
But this is the kind of thing that people are doing now, and you got to remember as well that yes, there are optical flaws with this and whatever. But to do this kind of stuff, then you had to plan so much ahead, and any changing in post, we got the angle wrong or whatever, you shift it, you degrade it because it has to be rephotographed again, or they have to zoom in, or so it blows the film up. It's not like now where you can kind of go, she should have been on the left, and they can do it so quickly. This is meticulously planned out. Again, the tightness of the story. There's nobody at the funeral but her.
No,
but you accept it, you buy it completely. I mean, she's the only person that's sad enough as it is. You never see their pet. You hear about the grandmother at some point. About Peyton's grandmother. You hear about. It makes that joke about how she thinks she's getting Alzheimer's because whenever she phones, Julie picks up the phone. But other than that, you never see or hear or reference anyone. It's a tragic. His whole family must be in mourning, but there's no mention.
No mention of it at all.
And it makes you think. What's there? And here's wonderful hospital sequence with an uncredited Jenny Agutter. And this is another thing about the film. Another thing about the film that's quite unique is there's only two female characters in the whole film.
Yeah, and the other one's uncredited.
She doesn't even get credit.
I know, and she's on Logan's Run. She's on American Werewolf in London. She's also I think it's a random cameo in Red Dwarf when Crichton gets compacted into his little box and she's like
she's a very well known and well respected actress. And there's director John Landis, who is a doctor here, just as he reprises a similar role in Spider-Man 2.
And Ivan as well.
Ivan Raimi is standing there as well. But it's interesting because also too, for a superhero film, usually there is a character like Jor-El, or even to some degree Alfred. You get a mentor character, or that guy that Nicole Williamson plays in Spawn as well, Cogliostro as well.
Yes, you do. But Darkman has
none. Well, this is the closest you get, and she's basically all she's doing is giving exposition. And I like to think. Again, you think if they've made a sequel or whatever, she might be a recurring character. She might be somebody who comes back.
Well, like in The Flash, she has the scientist lady who kind of helps him along the way. I think that's kind of that would have been an interesting kind of aspect of sequels, actually.
But I like it too that again, one of the most powerful professional characters in the film.
But then he doesn't have one because he is a scientist and he's just as smart as she is.
Well, I don't think this isn't. He's more about. He's dealing with skin, isn't he?
Yeah.
Whereas she's dealing with. Isn't she dealing more with nerves and autonomy? And
That's true. But she could be part of that same department, though. That's the thing. I mean, it's.
Well,
yeah,
no,
but maybe it kind of Sam maybe thought of that. Okay, well, he doesn't need one because he's just as smart.
well, I mean, she's there for exposition.
Yeah,
and
yeah,
it's,
of
and it's a
course.
great scene, and she's fantastic.
This
She's
is a great
brilliant.
little moment when he sort of the flashes go through his head, all the pain.
Yeah.
It's kind of what Sam did it with Spider-Man when he got bitten by the spider and woke up in the morning, wasn't it? Or before he went to bed or something.
Similar. I mean, it is
Yeah.
kind of a Razorheadish, isn't it? It's a
Well,
bit-
yeah, it was just like Evil Dead 2 as well,
Yeah.
when his hand goes all
Yeah,
funny.
yeah, yeah, yeah. This is a great shot. It's my favourite shots in film.
Really?
Yeah, where it pushes it, slow pushing here. It's brilliant. It's actually quite fast pushing. And it's, well, again, because the tone, it's gone all really theatrical. You've got this lightning going, and
Phantom of the Opera moment.
look at the big move she makes with her eyes, looking out the window. And that's it. That's one of the 2 female characters in the film has now left. But
This looks like something straight out of a comic book, but also kind of that Frankenstein monster,
yeah, well, it's universal horror, isn't
Yeah,
it? It's
yeah.
going back. I mean, he's a bit of a mummy here, isn't it, as well?
It is, yeah. The sort of it's very much like the Christopher Lee mummy in the Hammer Horrors.
Yeah, this is devastating stuff. This, but again, it's so big. When you look at those intimate scenes that we saw earlier, where Julie and Peyton are sat at home, and it's all very quite small and
Quaint.
in terms of small in terms of the performances, and it's really earnest. And now it's sort of big and operatic, and they're in the same scene together, and he's running across the road.
And he can't talk, can he?
It's
His
terrible.
voice is completely like charred by the fire.
I mean, you think about the real world logic of it. I guess you have to. There's some degree of suspension of disbelief to get you to buy that he'd just be shunned, and he would have even if he knows where she is, he wouldn't be able to.
Well, he's
approach
also thrown in a little bit of the Elephant Man into the character.
her. Yeah.
He's shunned by society.
Well, especially later on when we get to the fairground as well.
Yeah. Best bit, that is.
But there's so many. I mean, here you just see that skyline. You can see that they're composited a different sky and things. These are all things that now you could do so easily, and nobody would notice.
Sam Raimi, I must say, I mean, I don't think the blue screen is that good in this film, but I think he does things very creatively with the blue screen. That's what I don't
think
mind it. I don't mind it looking a bit.
The
rusty.
creative imagination just burns
outweighs
everything.
the crusty stuff.
I mean, look at this here, just too, like this whirlpool, this descent, into madness,
and
and he's showing it
crossfade
visually.
into his
Yeah,
eye,
and he integrates it. It isn't just a separate cliched image. He actually does something with it, and then turns it into a transition of something else.
Yeah, dissolving into that.
So again, you're not sat at a computer and going, I can change this and move this over here, and blah, blah, blah. He's doing a degree of that optically, which is why you're seeing all the artifacts. But they still they're still quite limiting, and doing things like a fade out too, and fade in, and now he's finding his.
Well, it's supposed to be like a disused soap factory, wasn't it? He goes to in a minute to find his new dwelling. Oh, he's gone back. He's just gone back to his own laboratory, isn't he? To find his notes and get some equipment.
Yeah, it's a brilliant set. Just look at it. But again, it's all twisted. There's all shadows cast across the side of the walls.
It's got a gothic horror look to it.
Yeah, no, completely. And it's really expressionistically lit and shot. It's big, it's bold, it's theatrical. But at the same time, he's got these cosmetic problems with his face, and his life's been ruined forever. It's been tight. Nothing's going to be the same. And even though it is big and huge, it's balancing it too. You've got real emotion here.
They still kind of hide his face and what he sees, doesn't it? It's kind of, as a kid, I was actually quite freaked out by how he looked when he
And
revealed
look at
his
that!
face.
Look at this! Look, you got the picture of
Half his face gone.
Yeah, in the picture frame. So close. Just little details like that everywhere. Not in one scene or two scenes, everywhere.
Because the first thing I ever knew about Darkman was when I was a kid. I came out of seeing Ninja Turtles, and I went down the road and I went to a newsagent's and got a film magazine which had Ninja Turtles on it. That's why I grabbed it. It's like an old, this old film magazine, but I flicked through it and had Darkman in there. I was like, what the hell is this? But it had the photo of him, and you see kind of his face and his teeth exposed. I was kind of freaked out by it all. But then I only kind of saw this film later on. It's only maybe in the late 90s, so I did not see this during that 90s period.
Right.
Only till late 90s I saw it.
Did you see it on when it was on television?
Yes, I did. Yes, I was like some like Sky Movies or something. My friend had taped it.
Right.
Then I grabbed it on Laserdisc.
This is a great set as well. Yes.
Oh, this was the disused soap
Just look,
factory.
can you
wasn't
see
it?
on the floor just the sand and stuff? It doesn't.
Yeah.
Even when it is hugely theatrical and veering towards artifice, like in the last bit where we saw the ruins of the very theatrical ruins of his former lair, it still looks like it's a location. It still looks real. It's still
Yeah.
You can really smell the dirt. It feels like the same world as at the beginning in the warehouse.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? It's just
It feels very much like a lived-in world. It
Yeah.
doesn't seem like it was a blatant set.
Yeah, but it's also saying something too, because you've got, as I said before, about sort of this ideas of inverted commas underclass in the 80s. These things are all kind of run down, kind of worn out spaces, and then you've got all these glass towers next to them, and that are kind of towering over, casting huge shadows, and so you end up in these lightless buildings.
I mean, we were talking about the look, and did you find Bill Pope's photography to a very high standard?
Did I?
Yeah.
Well, I think anyone should. Yeah, no, it's incredible. It's just amazing. And again, they were shooting on film.
Yeah.
And I think it looks like it was a single camera shoot. It looks like they were using one camera, just because of all the dynamic camera moves and everything just being meticulously thought out, but executed amazingly as well. I think
Sam Raimi's style is something that people think they could do very easily, but you come to realise how difficult it is.
Well, it's down to just things like the seconds that you spend on a camera move pushing in, and how far you can cut away. There are things like these big, beautiful, elaborate tracking shots. They're very hard to do because the actors have to be very, very quick to be able to compress the time. Yeah, I mean, anyone can easily shoot
Miss their
something.
mark,
But you can easily shoot a scene where two people are just talking at normal rate and on just tracking along, and you'll lose pace. Whereas if you shoot things separately, so if you shoot a conversation between two people and it's just cutting between a single back to a single, you could have people talking at a more relaxed pace, and then you could cut out the spaces in between. But to do it all in one shot, you have to choreograph the actors so that they're nearly overlapping each other when they're talking, and the pace has to be higher too, because everything feels like, and because you can't cut away out of anything, But Raimi seems to know how to do that, yet intercut it with other things, and then transition thing. It's just marvelous. It's amazing. The energy. Look at this transition. Look how much information is here.
It's a perfect way to visualise a montage.
And how much voiceover have we heard up until this point?
Oh, none.
None. Not 1 second.
He would only kind of talk to himself.
Look at the moon.
In brief moments.
Look at the moon at the top right there.
That's really
just
good.
to emphasise the darkness.
Yeah.
Without actually, we're never going to go outside and see him at night, but just you get just enough there, and it's put at just the right angle and everything, just so you know.
Were you impressed as a kid seeing the sort of CG heads and the nose that's created
Oh, of course,
in the machine?
Yeah. Well,
was that handled by the people that did some of the work on Tron?
No, I think it was done by Video Image, who they later did.
Is it Flight of the Navigator, possibly?
No, they did
No.
things like they did video displays for a lot of movies, but they also did CGI. They did things like the bats from Batman Returns.
Right.
I think yes, they did. I think.
Mm.
Yeah, an amazingly respectable company. I mean, this whole film has so many different facilities that worked on. We'll speak about that a bit later.
Sure. That's a really kind of sad
Yeah.
moment when they took his hand.
And it's done with a massive elaborate camera move where there's no
Yeah.
cutting away. This
And
is
now it's daytime. You can see on the left the lights coming
Yeah.
through.
but it's been towered out by all this other stuff.
Sure.
And then when you get in here, look how much light there is at the Strack Ball. Look how much food there is as well, enough to eat. And this, I just want to mention about the costume design here, which I think is so clever on Frances McDormand at the moment. As you can see, it's looking at her head on, and she looks very conservatively dressed. She almost looks like she's mourning still. It looks like funeral clothes.
It
doesn't
does.
It looks and he's coming over, and it's almost like he's preying on her and starting to take advantage. And you're thinking initially, no way, she's never going to be receptive. But this really clever costume design, because the whole back has been removed.
Yeah.
So when he then takes the opportunity to invite her on the dance floor,
You see it's all revealed that her back is exposed.
and where does he stick his hand? Straight onto her naked back. And you've got Peyton looking on as well. You've got Darkman looking on. So already you've established. See, look there. You see, and it just establishes a rage immediately. They've not done anything really,
No.
but just through those symbols, you're getting enough rage. And then when we push in, we're feeling his anger. We know, ooh, he's having that taken away. When all he's done is take her for a dance, he hasn't kissed her. He hasn't done it. He's touched her back, as any dance would do, but because she's got this open thing, but she's also wearing mourning clothes. I mean, it doesn't really make sense when you think about it, but it works brilliantly. And this is quite interesting. This moment with
Yeah, he's supposed to
Ten Raimi.
so some sort of, he has a sexual attraction to the character Rick, doesn't he?
Durant,
Yeah.
But I like how they play it. I like how it's very playful, and it's a bit camp too. The way they throw it in.
Sure.
He also compliments Rick too on the shooting of the I forget the psychic character's name at the beginning.
But then it's later revealed the other goons when he's got Rick's been killed, and he's like, obviously Durant's very upset, So.
But again, that could you got no female characters in this. That could have been a female gangster.
Mm.
But they chose not to. It was funnier to go with Ted Raimi. And they also make him the guy who, as I say, kills the psychic at the beginning.
Wasn't this whole sequence is shot at like a very small frame rate, isn't it? Maybe 410 frames per second. This sequence, they stuck him up.
Oh yeah, I mean it varies, doesn't it? But there's parts where you can see that they've really
undercranked it, and they kind of
Yeah. It looks really undercranked at points where it's speeding, doing that time lapse thing going past. But this is all meticulous as well. This stuff, it's brilliant. I can't really, a lot of the time. I mean, throughout the film, I can't really tell where the stunt dummies and the prosthetics and where they begin, or the animatronics, where they begin and where the live action stuff ends. It's all done in a kind of seamless way. It creates its own realism.
Because with its rhythm and its editing, it kind of makes it kind of seamless to a certain degree, where you don't feel like you're having to pick bits out.
But it's the tone as well. I mean, it just does amazingly. It goes, as I say, it goes from this small film about these guys and this couple who are very comfortable with each other in their mid-30s, a small intimate drama, to stuff like a man being thrown up through a street with a manhole cover bouncing out the way. Yeah. But they work in the same universe and they work brilliantly. And this is the other great thing that's wonderful is the playfulness is how you set up all these goons at the beginning who are just seen as horrible, sleazy, nasty pieces of work, and now they're being made fools of. They're being humiliated.
Yeah.
And it's part of the fun of watching that.
There's quite a lot of films where they always kind of get the mobster leader, he's kind of psychics, to be kind of framed and tricked. It's happened quite a few times.
But they do it. They really push it here. They really go for it. The technology again. There's something about it. I know now a lot of this stuff is probably not computer graphic. That arm looks like it's probably computer graphic. But
that is computer graphic.
But the compositing and the layers around it and whatnot. There's a lot of optical trickery here too.
I don't think at the time they could have had the same resolution as film to kind of composite everything.
Well, they were going.
They had obviously done stuff in Willow and The Abyss, but
that was the morphing and the pseudopod effect.
Yeah.
But this was still kind of in that period where they were, they're almost faking CGI with physical means.
Especially with TV, they were doing that quite a lot.
Like Max Headroom, for example. Yeah. But even in Escape from New York, I know that's kind of 8 years before this, but there was the wireframe computer fly-through sequences done with UV and stuff.
That's right, yeah. So on the right, I think they've done a split, haven't they? So that's stop motion.
That's a Kyoto Brothers.
Yeah.
Stop motion, I believe, as well.
That music there, that's very Danny Elfman. That's kind of, sowing the seeds
Look
of
at-
what will be in Batman Returns.
But even this becomes a transition. This computer
That's
screen.
really good. Yeah, good transition. That is so like the shadow there.
Mm.
Love that.
The playfulness.
He's probably better at being the shadow than the shadow film to a certain degree.
I really like the touch they've put in this big bald guy's bedroom as well, by putting the cross above the bed. It's quite unsettling when Durant comes in a bit later, and you can see that death is on the horizon, and but it also makes him look like a kind of innocent church boy.
It shows
as well.
that he has morals.
Yeah, and church boy roots, and probably listens to his mother.
Yeah.
It's great fun. I mean, look at his pajamas as well. You notice the silk pajamas. Like he's a good guy at heart. Right? They kind of covered a lot of that stuff too in films of the time, like Goodfellas, I guess. It's a pretty obvious example. And that tattoo that he's got at the top of his head as well.
Like a knife, isn't it? Or...
Yeah, that kind of pierces through the skin as well.
Clever detail.
I love the acting of each one of the characters. Remember,
They also have to have a kind of like pretend. It's like acting
pretending to be Liam
someone
Neeson
else.
playing
Yeah. It's like watching Monty Python, where they're men pretending to be women, but they're kind of like still acting like men.
Yeah.
You know.
But each one's has to execute two performances.
Sure.
So actually, maybe that's why the cast is so tight, because actually they're having to. Each cast member is having to execute two performances. Well, at least of the villains.
I think the actor that works best with that is Durant, also Larry Drake, when he has to pretend to be, well, Liam Neeson, essentially.
Mm. But I guess they give him more to do as well, whether this guy's killed off pretty quickly. I love the little Foley stretch they've got going on, the sound for when he pulls his neck. It's very funny. And more of these unbroken camera shots too here.
So tight though as well.
Yeah, well, they're on really wide lenses too.
Yeah, I know.
Going back and forth between them. So funny, isn't it?
Did you see the sequels, Tim?
Yes, I did.
I've got number 2 somewhere, but I haven't watched it yet.
Right.
I know I've made an effort. I should do it.
I'm sure you'll get around to it.
But I never saw the sort of proposed pilot they did. I don't think that's online, is it? It must be on YouTube somewhere,
it
floating
must
around.
Be, yeah. This is great. This sequence, all in one shot, handheld.
Had there been a handheld shot earlier?
Yes,
not to this
yes,
extent,
yes.
was it?
Well, yeah, when they're smashing stuff up in the lab.
Mm. This seems more difficult because it's so much more tighter as well, less space.
Yeah, and there's no music and there's no sound playing, so you're just. It's a much more kind of realistic scene. I love the disgust when he sees that Rick's name is down on the tickets.
He's jealous. He's going to come through now.
But again, it's never directly said. I mean, later on you hear, I think Strat makes a joke to Durant about, "Oh, your wife has died," and we're thinking, does he have one? Does he not have one? And then at one point, Darkman says something about, when he's pretending to be Durant, he says says something about his kids missing him.
Yeah.
And he says, "Robert, you don't have any kids," so you're really left to guess. With everyone in this film, actually, the extent of
the second guess.
the family outside of the world.
That's a really good stunt.
Brilliant stunt, isn't it? But again,
I love this moment now where the lady comes to see why is he sitting there? You know, he would have left ages ago. You know,
it's playful. Isn't it?
Or your skin begins to bobble, that sort of gelatin kind of thing on him, isn't it?
I love how she looks back and then looks towards him, and it's just for the benefit of the audience. But it knows that. The film knows that.
It's like
it's playing us.
It's like the Mitchell brothers from EastEnders here, isn't it?
I'd love to get one of those little broken stopwatches.
I love her hysterical performance. It's brilliant.
Yeah, it's great.
That's really good. That shot there. That
these
is proper
gargoyles.
gothic.
Well, it's one of the few gothic things we see. Probably the only gothic.
I think
thing
so.
we've
Yeah, this
seen
is
in
something
the
that you'd see in a Batman comic from
the
Frank Miller period.
with the composited on sky in the background.
I think that would have been better with front projection, or do you think you wouldn't have been able to have that transition into the background?
I think it's all about the transition, isn't it? I mean, it's again because the creativity and the imagination is so massive.
Yeah.
It just completely outweighs any of the kind of optical imperfections of the film. I mean, there are questions, I guess, in terms of plot holes or details that don't add up, such as why does he wear the same bandages over and over again, the same mouldy bandages? Is he getting infected? Is he gangrenous? You know.
Well, he had changed some of his bandages when he puts on a new mask, hadn't he?
But frequently throughout, he's always in these mouldy bandages.
I think it just adds a little bit of detail and makes them look a bit more interesting, I think.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I buy it. I never questioned it for the first.
It's like when you
50
see a
times I
mummy
watched it.
with all the bandages hanging off it.
Yeah,
This looks cool, you know.
But it does make you think of the sort of consistency of things. When he's being Durant, is he still in bandages underneath?
Yeah. Because he's only put on the hands and face. He also had to find the right clothes as well, you know.
Here's the descent into madness that he's doing now, where later up they follow it when they go to the theme park.
It's like he hasn't slept for at all. I don't think he's slept at all.
Well, it's also he's resenting the fact that people are going to see him as a circus freak.
Sure.
As a kind of fairground freak show. And his anger and rage is coming from that. And look, you see they're firing
added the red
lighting and stuff, which is very carnival-esque, you know. I mean, this is a great sort of big breakdown. And I love how they use footage from the beginning of the film and all the internal stuff, just kind of fill in the gaps. There's a lot. I think the film really shows rage perfectly, doesn't it? It really nails
They
rage.
even cut out a lot of the rage as well.
And a literal reflection of himself that he's looking down at. What have I become?
Well, there's quite a number of reports in terms of trivia on this film where Universal had handed Sam Raimi an editor of their own, and he had a nervous breakdown because he'd not been following the storyboards of the film that he'd been given to create this kind of rough cut or continue editing it as Sam had kind of observed the rushes, but he just couldn't handle the amount of footage that came through and what Sam was trying to do. He couldn't edit it in the way he wanted, so I had to get someone else to do it.
Well, I don't know anything about that. I just know that it's just incredibly well edited, incredibly frenetically edited as well, and layered and detailed.
If I had to edit a Sam Raimi film, I'd find it a huge challenge, just trying to get all those kind of montages done.
Yeah.
And kind of just the crazy, like the moments when he loses his temper. There's so many edits within that, you know.
Yeah, layers and layers and layers, and again that causes degradation of the shots and whatnot.
That's why you see things a lot of time, you know, in his films, especially pre-digital ones, you know, there's a lot of grain because there's so many layers.
Yeah.
That's why some people complain, they go, the transfer's not as good. You think, well, that's how it looked because there's so many layers involved to get that shot.
And here we have Westlake from beyond from the grave, appearing from the grave. I mean, I think
it has that sort of hazy look to it, doesn't it? When she sees him, I think when it cuts back to her,
it's got a slightly early morning crispness to it.
Yeah.
But I love the fact that they do this and they do it so well, that they have them reunite, and they do it quite early as opposed to right at the end of the film. And again, the mood of it changes. We're outside, so we've got the sun, we can see the blue skies. We can see it's an optimistic world for middle class people. Again, where would he get the clothes from?
Yeah, exactly.
Would be a question, but you don't.
You don't question it. No, you just kind of think it's just like we're saying with Clark Kent having Superman outfit underneath. You don't question that he's wearing 2 layers of clothes.
Well, it's all of these kind of cinematic conventions that Raimi plays with so well, and doesn't make you think twice about what's going on. But even the colour scheme here has changed. It's become much more golden. It's all optimistic, and again, it becomes a smaller film.
It goes back to in the beginning of their relationship in the film.
But the camera moves become a little more conservative. It becomes more about the acting, more about the characters.
A lot more tighter.
Yeah, but it's much
more...
It's
being intimate.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Even this scene, sat in the cafe outside, seems very sort of much more reserved, and it's again much more intimate. It's more real worldy, bringing them both together. It's a hard. I think it's such a hard tone to pull off.
Because it was going with its own idea. I mean, it wasn't based on anything. It was just kind of inspired by kind of earlier comics of like Batman, The Shadow, and borrowing elements from Universal horror films. He can kind of go with any direction he wanted, I think. And being his first film, having that freedom to do what he wanted to a certain degree. I mean, I think when it came to post production, he had a lot more restrictions put in place, generally with the final edit of the film. But still, the final outcome is what we're watching now, and what we've so fond of over these years.
But it
still works with those restrictions.
But it's these smaller moments. It's these dialogue sequences where they're talking with each other. It shows a growth too as a filmmaker, because there hadn't been things like this in, I'd argue, in none of the Evil Dead films or Crime Wave either. This is like real sort of proper meat and potatoes drama.
Yeah.
Durant's.
He's got his stuffed rabbit and his collection of fingers.
Well, even with the taxidermy stuff everywhere, it reminds me of Norman Bates in Psycho a bit, with the things like the falcon on the wall, and here he's got a stuffed bear.
Well, it's always a kind of way of showing wealth as well in sort of in America. Where
but this is much more
stuffed animals.
But this is more eccentric, isn't it? It's a cottage in the middle of Los Angeles. I like too how when he opens up the box full of fingers, we talked again about this world without women.
It's got a woman's finger.
There's one token. When the first time I saw this, my eye goes. Well, it should do. It goes straight to the red. Yeah, it goes to the red of
that could be
the
his
fingernail.
Ex-wife, I think, probably.
Who knows? But it just makes you think also too that there's no limits to this guy too. He attacks men, he attacks women, and these are nasty people with no limits.
One of my favourite shots coming up when he runs away from the house. You've got this sort of backlighting, but in the foreground you see his kind of shadow and his cape. Yeah. I love all that stuff. It's
one of the only green times we see green in the film as well. I mean, in terms of trees and lawn and.
Because everything else is very much kind of orange or grungy, or kind of it's got the sort of dark elements.
Well, it's concrete and glass, or it's dirty warehouses, and now we're seeing something that's sort of more of a kind of extravagant suburbia. Oh, this is really interesting. The voices that are thrown on as well.
They've actually shown you a believable kind of security camera. I hate it in films where they, even sometimes when they grab like a camera, like the characters picked up a digital camera, but they've literally shot it on film and added these scan lines.
Yeah.
This is crap, but this actually genuinely works. There's a bit of flicker to it.
But you notice the transition there from Robert Durant in the CCTV to Robert Durant in his close-up there. It was almost like a perfect transition.
It was, wasn't it? Even though his head was slightly turned the other way, but it worked.
Just bang. This is a great scene. Every scene in this film is great, but this scene is particularly great. The Chinatown sequence.
When he intimidates the owner. He wants his money for the cut, as it were.
Yeah. It's so good. And there's so much colour in this scene as well. A film called Darkman, and there's very few scenes that are actually set in the dark.
Now you mention that, as a kid, when I kind of saw snippets of it, I was like, it doesn't seem that dark.
It's a bright, optimistic-looking film. But it's, again, I think it's making that point of the fact that it's this kind of I guess the new America of the time, the corporate big glass and steel corporate kind of cleansing of America, seen in RoboCop. Because RoboCop's similar too, I think. A lot of RoboCop is set in the day as well.
It is, yeah.
Even RoboCop 2.
Yes, it is, yeah.
And in this film, it's only when we go dark is when
So you kind of think like maybe Robocop films have like 70% daytime and 30% night, you know.
But when we see dark,
Because his suit looks better, I think, a lot of time in light.
Sure.
You know.
but when we're dark in this film, it's only when we're descending into the madness of Peyton Westlake, when he's in his factory, when he's peering over the city, where he's running through the alleyways in the rain. I love that there where Durant, the real Durant, runs down those city steps, and he barks at his lawyer. Just sort of Grand Theft Auto kind of world of law, isn't it?
Yeah.
Just buy me out, just whatever, you know. And they don't think twice about taking shots in the middle of the street.
Do you recognise they've got the quite very stocky sort of Asian man behind them, who's from The Running Man?
Oh, really?
Yeah, he's one of the guys that, you know, I think he's the guy with the hockey stick, I think it was.
Right. I love this guy's white suit.
Mm-hmm.
But this is, again, we're talking about Larry Drake. You never think for a second that's just Larry Drake playing him. You think that it's Liam Neeson playing Larry Drake. It's so good. I think he's an amazing performer, Larry Drake.
He looks a bit cross-eyed there.
Yeah.
He looks at
he's got this goofy school teacher look to him, hasn't he?
Yeah.
He sort of plays to it. But you see him mercifully holding a machine gun, just mowing people down.
And chopping off fingers.
Yeah. And the tension here too.
Nice fake hand.
It's the tension. And all these massively distorted wide lens shots of people from different parts of the room. Look how low the camera is there, just peering right up at that guy. You feel like you're in the room. You really do. I always think, because 1992, Gremlins 2 mentioned before, that has an opening sequence in Chinatown. It all feels kind of homogenised to me. It's funny too because Larry Drake played a character of Benny, who was a special needs character in the TV show LA Law. It's completely different to here. He played a kind of sadistic Santa in the first ever Tales from the Crypt episode as well that Robert Zemeckis directed.
Was it directed?
Yeah. And he's really good in that. He's a really good actor, I think. Amazing face. There's a little flaw here in this great. This is a motion control trick shot with Durant in the spinning doors. And as he comes out, if you look closely, at the first Durant that runs out, you can see there's a bit of an artifact as his arm kind of gets crossed
glass,
out.
Isn't
yeah,
it?
It gets held. But I mean, I only noticed that on my 96th viewing.
Well, that was when he did the screen test for this job. You know, he had to do this kind of sequence. You know, to Sam Raimi, pretend to do these two characters. Kind of winged it and got the part.
I love the slapstick.
That's all a kind of I think this is all a set, this bit, and then it cuts back and forth to Chinatown.
It's just invisible. So good. It's perfectly executed.
I love all that when the skin just kind of bubbles.
They were big into that in The Howling. Joe Dante that Rob Bottin had done, and there's some of it in Life Force as well. And
oh yeah,
they kind of do that. Seemed to be a thing that era of.
Wasn't there a bit in Critters when the guys like kind of transform into
possibly? I can't. But it was a great era of prosthetic makeup where things were really blowing up, really taking off. It's funny, isn't it, how you just have them shooting, as I say, sort of in the middle of public, in the middle of daylight, fully exposed, and not one police person turns up.
It's the movies.
But it's the characters as well. That's who they are. They've got access to everywhere. They've got the golden key. They know the right people.
It's a really creepy shot of that kind of doll bouncing around it's like a little girl doll, and it always freaks me out. That it's like something out of League of Gentlemen, you know.
It reminds me of the Toby Hooper film Funhouse as well.
I haven't seen
similar
that
creepy clowns. Here we have yet another scene against an acid blue summery sky. This is the infamous pink elephant scene coming up.
take the fucking elephant.
Peyton, we need more time together.
It's probably one of the funniest shots when he bends his finger and the camera just goes whip, like pans, whips around to each actor.
Well, it's also unfortunate too because he spent most of his time indoors, and one of the most annoying human interactions that you have every so often where somebody's just being disagreeable for the sake of it.
Yeah.
He just happens to run into that person,
Yeah,
and it
that
fully
tips him
takes
over.
advantage, and it changes him for the rest of the film.
But also
His-
now he's kind of reflecting on what people would react to him. when
Yeah,
they see these
well, it's that
freaks.
resentment we were talking. It's been building up when he saw the cat, and he said, "You think I'm a little clown? Do you think I'm I'm here to entertain you, or whatever it is?"
Yeah.
He says earlier. Now it's following it up, but with all these people stood around looking at the
But he always has to get some sort of reassurance from her that she wouldn't find him repulsive.
yeah.
You know,
Well, he's also,
his confidence is completely just shattered.
but he's also on the outside of that sort of middle class world that he'd been in previously, where he was a professional and he had her staying there, and he was sort of questioning at the time. He was saying, "Well, shouldn't we move in together? Shouldn't we make this a bit more serious?" And he's actually gone he's been without her for a long time, and she's been without him, but he's seen a darker side to it. He's seen her turn him down before. That's really burnt. Really burnt him. She's seen. Remember the bit at the hotel where he wanders up to her in the rain,
Yeah.
and puts his hand out. So he's been really, really burned, and he can't let that out, and he probably has that all pent up too. And it really expressionistically shows those inner workings of the character in the film through everything. Even things like he stood behind that red in the background,
Yeah.
and then when they zoom in at him later and they push the colours up and stuff, they play off on it. I love the low keyness of the work.
Well, it also got that Dutch angle when
Yeah.
he gets closer to him.
Yeah. Well, it's using the form, camera and lighting, in a non-naturalistic way to show you what's inside of him, just like German expressionism would do.
Elephant.
This guy's so intimidating, isn't he? This.
Weirdo.
What would you call him? What's his role?
What would an aggravator?
He's a guy standing at. What would we call him, Oliver? What?
I'd call him a gypsy.
He's a
He's
fairground.
he's carny folk.
Yeah, he's a
Yeah.
carny. Yeah. Look how brilliant they are.
So he goes, "Yeah," like that.
But can you imagine
Love that.
Imagine that with all of these makeup effects going off and whatever, she
Oh,
still
yeah.
manages to maintain the performance. And listen here, there's a great bit of dialogue. Voice. Half man and a freak. You hear that?
Yeah.
And they play that over, and it gives you meaning to the everything's linked here.
There should have had a bit of echo to that as well.
It's great.
This is interesting. The whole empty street,
Mm.
completely dead. It is also like, you go back to RoboCop where you've got these kind of just dead streets. Where you just have a bit of homeless people walking around when he sort of bombs through in the police car.
Which is what the big
Which is kind of-
corporations want to
Which is actually
flatten.
more obvious in number 2, actually. I think, when you kind of go down the streets and there's all kind of war.
RoboCop 2.
Yeah.
But I think there's something about that actually too. I noticed we were talking before about films of this time. Even something like The Mask that came out 4 years after this too. That kind of does the same. It picks these parts of Los Angeles, and it's areas where there aren't any people, and then they film the whole film in these areas.
I think The Mask is kind of because it's very much kind of backlot Warner's thing, and it feels like a set a lot of the time.
No, but the actual location stuff that's in it.
Yeah, it's set during the day mostly. There's kind of
But it
location
creates
stuff.
this weird kind of fantasy.
It does, yeah. It's like
version
it's
of
like
Los
a city
Angeles.
just cut off from
Yeah,
everywhere.
and I get that with. I mean, this is doing something else. It's interesting too because in RoboCop they used 2 separate cities, didn't they, to show Delta City and
Yes, they did. Yeah.
and Old Detroit.
Yeah.
Whereas here they're just just using Los Angeles,
Mm.
and they're getting a similar kind of effect, which I think is kind of it's interesting. It's funny, that, isn't it?
It is.
I would have tried to help.
I think this is great.
I can help you now.
You know, this is a very stylized way of doing things, putting her in that very theatrical position in a massive set, but she still manages to give a really naturalistic, convincing, heartfelt performance.
Well, this was one of her kind of early roles, wasn't it? I mean, she'd maybe done. She'd done something else at the time. Didn't she get like a nomination around the same point?
I think she got an Oscar nomination
Yeah.
before this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But she was obviously at the time kind of living with Sam and the Coens.
Isn't it? She's married to
Is it
Joel
Joel?
Coen,
Yeah.
isn't it? And of course they did Fargo. and-
Yeah, that was amazing. Fargo was.
You know what this is, Oliver? This is one of my favourite scenes in Darkman. Another one of my favourite scenes in Darkman.
That was like a lie.
No, I love this scene is so good because this is a kind of callback for the earlier sequence, which is almost parallel.
It was when he reveals his project, isn't it?
And also the Belisarius memoranda pops up.
You know about Peyton and I was involved with? Of course. He's alive.
And I love how cold she is towards him, and he's still doing his kind of, hey, I'm a sort of the warm salesman kind of thing.
Yeah.
What you're hearing isn't what he's actually thinking. We were talking before about those unrealistic creative licenses that are taken with sort of filmmaking conventions, and you got him over there in this big office on the phone having a conversation, and she's in the foreground here. Raimi kind of mutes him and puts the music up,
But also
then he reappears behind her
yeah.
a bit late, just here, and it's completely unrealistic, but it works. You buy it. It's but it's playing around. It's something that would happen in a cartoon, but October 15th, 1989, on the memorandum.
I actually probably filmed it at that time anyway. But it's also that with these moments, his editing style, style of pace is completely slowed down.
Yeah,
You
but
know,
but you want it to. You want to breathe.
Yeah.
you
But
want
some
to hear.
directors just don't know how to do that. They just
Yeah.
can cut, and he's holding the shots for longer periods of time.
One of the other thing too is
And now you're killing me.
to do a film like this, you're mixing so many different genres and so many different tones. And with comedy and action and horror,
Yeah.
you need to have drama.
Mm.
It has to be there. There has to be heart with the characters as well. It can't be just a ramp, bum, 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 bum. And Raimi knows this. He's an expert in. I mean, he's done. Look at the other films that he did, like Simple Plan.
Yeah. Quick and the Dead.
But
So that's kind of more.
Yeah.
More. He's not. It's not as serious as say Simple Plan, is it?
But that's a small, intimate drama with people, and he does
Mm.
that as well as he does his Spider-Man or whatever else, and he just knows everything inside out, and conveys it so well here. It's so inspiring.
Well, you were saying earlier we had a flick through some of the film prior to doing a commentary, and he said, when you were younger, watching this on tape, that sort of blue screen composite didn't look as bad.
Oh, the reveal
Yeah.
of Strat City. Well, I love the reveal of Strat City. I love how
It is great,
Yeah,
but it's
yeah.
just once he starts moving, you've got that.
Yeah.
wobbly,
It's
you
got
know.
the artifacts of the time, unfortunately, but that's the technology, isn't it? But I think it's just the level of visual imagination is incredible, and the actual background itself is fantastic. It's just the compositing of it into that window that isn't
Yeah.
so much. But I love what he's selling there, and I love too just the proxemics between the blocking between them. I love the fact that she's cold and she has her hands down. At the beginning, he'd put her wrapped her arm around her and she was all open. Even before, her body language when she'd sat down with him before, she was all kind of open, and now it's all clasped up. And they purposefully put her in that suit as well, so that she appears to be more distanced from
Her shoulders
Strat.
are more kind of down.
Yeah. And she's a professional. She's returned to being a professional as she was before. I love how they got the stock numbers going up through in the background, just on.
It covers
LED.
part of that sort of Wall Street kind of yuppie kind of appeal, where they've got that. Sort
Well,
of,
it's like OCP as well, isn't it?
yeah.
No problem at all. And the good news?
But Danny Elfman, just to go back, the bigness of his score, the way that he's got he has an actual theme for Strack City as well. He's got and it's recurring, and you know what's coming. And there's that model we've seen at the beginning, and they show you it outside the window.
Would you say the score of Darkman's better than Batman?
I think that's like comparing.
Do you think they're vastly different, or do you think that it's difficult for you to decide?
These are A-grade iconic scores. Certainly Darkman is for me. Batman is a very iconic score.
Yeah.
I think it's pointless to
make
to
comparison.
even begin. They're just amazing. They're in another league, and I'm so glad that we have them. They're amazing. Again, another break for humanity, as you said before about pace. The shots are very
All slowed
drawn
down,
out here,
yeah.
and
But then suddenly they
yeah.
come in. The energy comes
Camera
rushing back
moves.
in now.
picks up a frenetic pace. But I love Louis Strack. I think he's an amazing villain. I think he's so good. And I think Colin Friels, who's such a weird choice if you think about
Well,
it.
yeah, because I was never too fond of him, but then you kind of, because this is also before we did the commentary, I started quizzing Tim on what we thought of the actor, and he said, "Well, you're not supposed to like him, you know, but you
Completely unlikable.
yeah, unlikable, yeah." Where the film wants you to kind of trick you into thinking he may be a good guy, but
He makes
I-
you root more and more and more and more for Peyton all the way.
Yeah. I just thought they would have gone for maybe kind of more villainous kind of performer. Or maybe someone is always end up casting an English guy, you know, something like that. But more of a
I think he's Australian, Colin Friels. I mean, he's done great theatre work and loads of great movies in
I
Australia.
thought maybe someone with a bit more of a stronger voice, because when he does this, is when he stands up on top of the scaffolding, whatever it was, and then he screams, he goes, "This is my city." I thought someone with a bit more powerful voice. I thought.
No, but I like the fact that he sells charisma. I like the fact that he's so manipulative. I like the fact that he can use the same tone and seem like he really cares, and he can help a bereaved Julie Hastings, but at the same time he can quite happily watch somebody fall to their death who's doing
There's a great moment here where he slides down. Look at these explosions, they're mental.
Yeah.
But he slides down the stairs and like his optical flame, like he's gone through it, and it blends so well.
It just looks like debris at the front, or it might even be real debris. Who knows? I mean, I'm jury's out, I guess. Here it is, isn't it?
Yeah,
It's
he
exposing
fires, he
it.
ducks down in time.
It's there. I'm not sure.
I think they've optically added a flame in front.
I don't think I think the flame's real. I think the foreground might possibly be. I don't know. Who knows? But yeah, it's a great frenetic chase sequence. This, but you're clearly seeing everything. The geography's there. You know what's going on. And the whole of this action sequence, going all the way through to the helicopter chase, it's in this sort of perpetual sort of sunset as well.
Yeah.
It's really going against type, for this kind of sequence.
Well, when you watch Batman, when you see it's daytime, it's overcast. It's very cloudy.
Yeah.
There's
Well-
no. I don't think there's any. There's only maybe one shot where it kind of feels like there's sun coming through. I think when Vicky Vale leaves, next morning, something like that. But
Even
it's
that's
always,
heavy.
yeah, that
Well,
kind of feels like you don't really know.
Although, in
Um,
fairness, that was shot in England during winter.
yeah.
So
Miserable
I'm not
England.
entirely sure that was a creative choice. But no, but I know what you mean.
Yeah.
Whereas here,
But that film kind of feels like it's set in a perpetual night all the time.
yeah.
Where this is day to night all the time.
Yeah,
You've
but it's
got
also-
that contrast.
Yeah, but it's also showing you that if you're middle class and you're a professional and you're adhering to this American dream of glass towers, and if you're all in favour of that, you're fine, and you're part of it, and you're part of that community and that world.
Part of the system.
But if you're not, then you're cast aside and you're in the shadows.
Yeah. I.e. Darkman.
In the rundown areas that are going to get flattened.
Oh, that! I always cringe at that shot when he comes flying down towards them. But to give it fairness, though, if you pause it, There's no kind of loss of colour. It's bright red, bright black and white. His outfit.
But it plays too with the those neurological montages.
Yeah, it does. It does. Yeah, but it just kind of looks a bit hokey pokey a little bit in some scenes.
The energy and the creativity and the imagination just changes them. I think I love Liam Neeson's performance here when he wakes up and he's got the tape over his mouth. Look at his eyes. It's great.
It's so got two masks on. It's so silly, isn't it? My God.
This long-haired guy. This composite here. Can you see? It's a two-shot, and you got that smoke going through the background. Where do they put the?
Split.
I have no idea how they did
It's
this.
amazing. I never noticed that before.
And he's got long blonde hair as well.
Yeah.
It's amazing. So funny. Don't you just love how every...
That's so Evil Dead, isn't it?
Yeah,
with the
but-
fist, with no kind of seeing the
yeah.
person who's throwing it.
But every camera shot's using it. There's your sunset again.
Yep.
It's coming now. Everything looks beautiful. I like how the villains too have got that Strat helicopter, and there's no pretense to cover it up. They're just full on corrupt. They don't care. The brief is to kill Peyton Westlake. It's not to worry about doing it in a covert.
No. They don't care. Actually, there's no sense of authority in this film. There's no police, is there? No police.
Well,
turn up.
actually, you do see a police helicopter fly past later. So maybe the system isn't completely corrupt. Oh, and actually,
I'm trying to think.
yeah, there's a police helicopter that goes past.
Right. Okay. Like, there's nothing from before though.
With a police officer.
Yeah, they're
who-
turning up though to kind of
No.
assess the scene.
No.
Because
Well,
it moves along so quickly. There's no time for.
but it leads you to believe that there's this sense of just non-stop corruption,
Yeah.
impenetrable corruption. The holograms are great, aren't they? In this?
Oh, fantastic! Yeah.
So even when we see the police helicopter go past, it shows that there isn't entire corruption in the city. There is somebody has
Was
a moral
that behind him? Was that a matte? It's not a matte painting, is it? It's just a shot.
I think it's just a plate,
Yeah,
a miniature.
plate. Yeah.
Well, this exploding building. I think this is another one of the Skotak brothers exploding miniatures. I think
It's incredible.
probably Joseph Lascozal probably doing the pyrotechnics here. Seamless,
It
absolutely.
is absolutely seamless. Yeah.
Just great. I was going to mention actually too, there seemed to be a thing around this time in visual effects movies, probably with maybe RoboCop, maybe I don't want to say it's a starting point, but certainly throughout the 80s, there a lot of movies that were made, they would have one visual effects facility like ILM or Boss or whoever, DreamQuest, handling kind of everything.
Yeah.
And then you ended up with RoboCop is one of the films, and it's always been there. I'm not saying these are,
Yeah.
these are all, but
And now it's commonplace.
RoboCop had, for each sequence almost, or each kind of effect technique, you'd had a different facility doing different shots.
Yeah.
So you had Ed 209 being done by Phil Tippett, and then you had the vision stuff that was done by VCE. You had the matte paintings that were done by Rocco Joffre. And this film's kind of similar in that you've actually got miniatures and matte paintings, but it isn't like they've got one facility to do all of them. They've got Intravision doing the end sequence. You've got the view out of the window of Strack City being done by Matt World. VCE doing opticals, the Skotex doing specific miniature sequence. Like, they seem to engage different teams of different companies to do different shots.
It's a whole kind of like freelancing thing pushed to its fullest, really.
But kind of, I mean, it's always kind of been there. I mean, Superman and even the first Star Wars film had different facilities for different things, but it just seemed that was kind of a trend in the 80s to kind of have one place to go different
Well, do you
things.
think that's probably because in the 70s the sort of studios sort of crumbling, and sort of trying to, they're also having their own departments sort of kind of petered out. People have retired, so it was kind of
Yeah, but I mean, when
people from advertising kind of moved up.
But when you think of the post ILM and even sort of Douglas Trumbull and doing Close Encounters, generally on a lot of these films, they tended to have one facility doing a lot of the work,
yeah.
whereas they sort of farm things out. But my point is, I just love the different techniques that are used for different things that are
Sure.
so different throughout the whole of this film. So you've got matte paintings.
Well, each shot's done in stages with the best kind of technique they could get at the time.
And don't get me wrong, there were lots of different facilities.
Talking of this sequence here, sorry, is the explosions. I love the sound effect,
Yeah.
and it's so meaty as well. It's not like this sort of stock sound effect of an explosion. It just seems kind of natural.
Yeah, and it's so dynamic too. But I have a great affection for this period and the techniques that were done and just I think there's great work in so many of these films that we grew up on.
You sort of now kind of take for granted, you know.
This is I think this is a Skotak miniature here when the helicopter blows up. And isn't this tunnel sequence, isn't it oddly reminiscent of the Mission Impossible movie ending with Tom Cruise? Even though that was 6 years after this. And that's a visual effect too.
They're coming up actually there's a bit later on you've got that amazing kind of matte painting. It's kind of the sun's coming up. But the shots coming up now is sort of the Introvision process where you've got is a combination of kind of a miniature combined with live action stuff, isn't it?
Yeah, I believe with front projection.
Yeah, some mirrors at different angles.
But some way of getting the actors to go behind the background.
That's right. Yeah, when I read up about it, when I did a review on Outland, because that used it quite a lot, and the technique sounded so complicated to sort of kind of describe how it worked. But it wasn't used that much, which is kind of surprising because the results are outstanding. But he did use it quite a lot in Army of Darkness as well. I think there's a bit of it in Cliffhanger, I think, Introvision. Maybe that actually had Zoptics, actually.
On what's her
Cliffhanger.
Yeah, that was Zoptic, yeah. Introvision had been used on, as you say, a number of films.
Fugitive, I think, used it as well.
Yeah.
He jumps off the train.
But because it's an in-camera front projection process, there's no matte line. And because they're going behind elements of the background too, it just makes you think, wow,
it seems real,
It's interesting. This is a great bait scene, I think.
Is that miniature as well there?
No idea.
Yeah.
Seamless.
And the thug there who's holding Julie is actually Liam Neeson's stuntman. He's stunt double, as it were, for the action scenes.
It's fun watching Strack trying to work out is this really Durant or is...
I think he already knows.
Yeah.
He's just playing with him.
Listen to the sound design here. It's nothing but bolt sounds.
Yeah.
Then we go straight into this big score here to show the bottom of the skyscraper. But the use of sound is just as vivid too.
There's a lot of scenes where they don't even have score. They just use the dialogue and the sound effects.
There's the argument that she's Frances McDormand's character Julie is something of a damsel in distress at this point.
Yeah.
I don't agree with that at all, because at the beginning, when there's the scene at Westlake's lab, where his lab assistant gets killed, and he effectively gets wasted as well. It's only really through luck that he gets propelled through the roof and becomes the Darkman.
Sure.
And gets saved by that surgeon and whatever. They got wiped out pretty quickly, and you've got a similar villain now who's doing the same to Julie, and she's not dead yet. She's actually done a lot more than she got further than any of those characters do. I think if it had been a male character, I think it would be exactly the same situation. I think it's more about the fact that these are really cutthroat, nasty people. These are bad people with no morals, and it's being amongst them.
But it's also interesting. He's taken up so far up high up to sort of give him his speech just to kill him. He could have done it down below.
Yeah,
you
but
know.
remember as well, he's worked in high steel. He's just
Yeah.
admitted he worked in high steel when he was younger. He's in his element up there, whereas it's to Peyton's disadvantage because
Yeah.
he's not skilled in this.
Look
But
at,
here,
look at this MC Hammer trousers. Parachute
but
pants.
even here, Julie manages to knock that guy down.
Yeah.
She's given something to do, and she's tied up as well too. And
Yeah. Well, she's only in distress because she's just being pushed, you know, so she has to have someone save her, not due to because she was just put in that scenario. She's being pushed into it.
yeah, and she's not wearing a tiny skirt.
No,
She's not wearing a tiny little dress. I love the little detail of the helicopter
It's
going.
amazing.
Yeah, it's great. But as I said, they're not fetishizing her. They're not
No.
objectifying her. She's wearing her professional suit that she's very down to earth.
Yeah.
She's the most down to earth thing in all the fantastical stuff that's going on there. She's probably the person we can relate to closest, apart from Peyton. But she's also joining the dots of the world that she's not really been privy to. She's probably starting to appreciate what she had
Yeah.
and how that isn't a normal given
Mm.
as well. What she had was incredibly fortunate to have that life with Peyton and to have a professional job to go to every day, not worry about things. She was kind of not really aware of the world around her and all the corruption,
Well, she's been so focused on her job and not aware of what, yeah, I say, what's happening
and
around
willing to turn a blind eye to things like the Belisarius
No, she would,
memorandum.
yeah.
Whereas now she's realised the consequences. I love the death of this villain. That great evil
It's got a
shrug.
nice bit of looping there from Bruce Campbell, the screaming.
I love the way how Colin Fields kind of shrugs it too.
Yeah.
And he looks really debonair. I mean, the other thing too is on a cosmetic level, Strack looks like a pretty boy throughout this. He's got a beautiful suit on. He's got good complexion. He doesn't even have any scratches on him or anything. And you've got the complete opposite of that. You've got a massive
It's
contrast.
monster he's up against.
Huge contrast with Darkman. So you really get that because you've got those two great contrasts. It really helps you to really appreciate that you can't disguise ugly things. You know.
I love this little sequence here when he goes to save her because it's that great Introvision plate.
Yeah.
It's that classic sequence from like Errol Flynn. sort of
But I
thing,
love
you
the
know.
whip pans as well. They're always choreographed like in an Edgar Wright film. You know.
Yeah,
they're just-
yeah. Also when he falls off, that sort of camera spin, well, the background plate spins
Yeah.
as he falls.
Well, I wanted to say too, a lot of this
They're
stuff.
so comical. That is Evil Dead.
But because this
you
stuff
know.
is all in camera, it has to be planned in advance massively.
Sure.
Whereas now you could change a lot of stuff. This all would have been done in the storyboarding phase. There's no room for changing stuff afterwards. So Sam Raimi was really on it. And this is great, isn't it? The moral dilemma. It says killing me. It's not something you can live with,
Yeah.
and he has to. You can actually see Liam Neeson thinking about it. That's what Liam Neeson brings to this, I think. Just look at his eyes here. Not something you
act
can live
well
with.
with
Look at
his
his eyes.
eyes.
Look into his eyes. You can see he's thinking about
He
it.
closes his eye. He doesn't want to see it.
No, he's watching him all the way down.
When he closed his eyes when he dropped
Yeah.
him.
Well, no, he's closing his eyes to think this
Yeah.
is it. This is the choice I have to make. And Bye Bye Strack, probably one of the best screen villains ever.
Now that is a matte painting.
Brilliant matte painting there.
Gorgeous.
Wonderful transition. And again, a great adjustment from that dark world, that dark theatrical world.
Was that painting done by Matt World?
I think that was done by Introvision.
Okay.
I think. Whoever did it, they did an
Incredible
Incredible
job.
job.
Yeah. It's probably one of the best mats I've seen for a long time.
But it's a great transition into we're going back to the sun-soaked world of the kind of every town Los Angeles.
And the sun's coming up and he needs to hide.
Yeah.
It's just a burn. Skin deep. It doesn't matter.
Apparently it took him 18 hours to put that makeup on.
Hid behind a mask.
We mentioned before about voiceover.
Mm.
There's one bit coming up at the end, isn't there? That kind of
Yes,
summarises it.
yeah.
This
When
is
Bruce
hard.
Campbell pops up.
I mean, this is torturously heartbreaking as a kid.
Yeah.
I think
Because
because you're
he's focusing only on... His face keeps turning in and out of the light. You're focusing on the horrible.
We also
parts,
think,
you know.
why would you walk away? This is everything. The life that they have together, that they appreciate, now that they see the value of.
But he said,
Why would they give everything up? I remember seeing that as a kid and thinking, well, I think it's.
He's changed though. That's the thing, isn't it?
But you think, it is really bold. It's a really, really bold move, but it's heartbreaking.
It is, yeah.
And it's something I hope nobody would have to do in real life.
It's also kind of downbeat ending as well.
Massively. Well, what's he going to do? He's going to get gangrene and he's going to rot somewhere in his bandages, you know?
Peyton is gone.
It's devastating.
Well, it's a comic book world, so he wouldn't have gangrene and stuff. He'd be fine. He'd just end up living like a freak the rest of his life.
And what becomes of Strack City now?
Becomes Delta City.
And this feels like a hangover, doesn't it?
It does, yeah. The sun just go
It's running out in the middle of the
blistering
morning.
out.
What would you say? It's about 7 o'clock in the morning there.
I'd just put something like 7 or 8.
I'm everyone
Yay!
and no one.
Great Bruce Campbell.
If chins could kill, Bruce Campbell.
It's very cruel. Very cruel on Julie.
Well, that would have been great if the sequel had Bruce Campbell.
But it leaves your imagination thinking, why are we doing, this is so cruel. And I think that's the brilliance of it, because it means you can return to the film time and time and time again to enjoy every brilliant moment of it. It's such a good film. What a good film. Wonderful film. So special.
Would you say this is probably a better superhero movie than, say, Spider-Man he did? Do you think it's kind of more comic booky, or do you think it's kind of more? Do you think he felt it was a bit more of a strain on Sam Raimi with Spider-Man?
For me personally, I had seen Darkman even by the time the original Spider-Man Sam Raimi film came out.
Yeah.
I'd seen Darkman so many times, so I recognised moments that seem very similar. I'm very attached to them. And I think Spider-Man's brilliant, by the way. It's a great film. I think all of Sam Raimi's films are brilliant. But this is also a nostalgic thing too. I often hear about people describing the best year for cinema.
Yeah.
And quite often you hear people saying 1985, 1989,
82 for me.
82. For me, it's probably got to be, and nostalgia plays a huge part in this. This is a life experience thing too.
Sure.
This isn't that. 1990 for me was an incredible year for cinema.
You had Darkman, you had Turtles.
I remember going to I was on the other side of the pond, and I went to a cinema there to see the Ninja Turtles movie, which for any kid at that time was just mind-blowing.
Yeah, it's
I
groundbreaking
can't imagine
stuff.
there being a equivalent of that now, just because it came out so quickly after the cartoon show.
Yeah.
But I remember being in the cinema, which was next to an arcade, and it was in a mall, and they had the posters up for Gremlins 2, Ninja Turtles, RoboCop 2. Granted, whatever anyone thinks of RoboCop 2, at the time it was a sequel to RoboCop that was an amazing film.
Yeah.
There was Total Recall, which obviously I wouldn't even be able to understand, but and the Jetsons movie as well, and it was just it was like, wow, all the things that just seem amazing to somebody who
When you're young and
is a child.
you know.
Yeah, it was mind blowing, and. This I don't think was there at that time. It might have been on one of the bus posters as well, but I put it, within that era, and it's really special. And even the look of a lot of these films, and even the visual effects. I mean, here's a bit of trivia: if you look at the people who do the animation, do like the lightning animation in a lot of these, like Gremlins 2, RoboCop 2, this film. I think it's the same person who does the same lightning. It all just had that kind of thing going.
Well, that's kind of when you look at like Ghostbusters and you look at like Big Trouble and Superman 4, the lightning of like Nuclear Man and the sun and the lightning god. They're all kind of similar.
But it plays into
animation.
the nostalgia of when we grew up.
Yeah.
And what was around us. And I think there will be an equivalent of that now with
I think younger
the next
kind of-
generation.
with this younger generation, there'll be a set year for them.
Yeah, and it's special to everyone, by the way. Everybody has that. I think it's really important too. And but Darkman played into that, even though I actually saw it 3 years after that era.
Sure, yeah.
Well,
yeah, because I said 1982, and that's the year I was born. No, but looking at that year, there's so many films I loved when as I grew up. I think making a list of films you enjoy watching, you think, they're all from 1982. This is such a bizarre coincidence,
Well, the other thing too is the tone of this. As we mentioned before, it's just the way it goes from being. It's kind of, it is in many ways like a comedy thriller, in that you've got moments where it's very broad and very almost like farce and slapstick.
Well, it's
but then it's gruesome and it's gritty, and you've got these horrible deaths where you're really seeing people being tortured.
Yeah.
Torturous deaths.
Yeah.
And to do that to be bold enough to do that in the same thing without laughing at one of them or being too murderous in one of them, to get the tone really spot on is
it's difficult to juggle.
Very hard. It's very, 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 very hard. Tone is key to directing as well, and
because sometimes you can watch a film where the tone is so inconsistent, it makes it such a difficult watch.
Yeah.
Or some scenes just seem completely out of place and really kind of, in bad taste.
Yeah, and this just gets it. Plus, it's, as I said, it's got this key story with Frances McDormand playing Julie and Liam Neeson as Peyton, and they give it this heart to it that kind of goes beyond it. It's not a superficial thing. These are people in their 30s, as I said before, who are happy together, who are out of the honeymoon phase, and then there's a fantasy that's built onto that seems to be about something, that seems to be reflecting the politics of the time, in my opinion.
Yeah. Well, everyone, I hope you enjoyed the commentary. Me and Tim will be back with some more very soon. Take care and goodbye.